Psychiatrists of Reddit, what was the most obvious attempt to fake insanity you've seen? Had a mother come in and insist that her child had Silver Russell syndrome. You can go red on it. It's not that easy to fake, as it's a bunch of metabolic conditions mixed with congenital abnormalities. The kid was small, but not that small, around 6th percentile. He didn't weigh much, 5th percentile. All of this, with a right arm length 2 centimeters more than the left side, were borderline criteria for Silver Russell. Did genetic testing, which came back negative, but 30% of cases are negative. So the deciding factor was one of the soft criteria of hypoglycemia. Once she heard about this, she printed out 30 to 40 articles on the disease. She came back with the kid in a coma. But when the kid was in the hospital, he was never hypoglycemic. He went home and came back in a coma a few weeks later. Again, as soon as he was eating normally at the hospital, he was never hypoglycemic. She starved her child into comas repeatedly for the diagnosis of Silver Russell. She was also a Baugan, people who live off welfare and make a game out of it. By the way, she was in a wheelchair when at the hospital. Once I had enough of her bullshit and walked into the room after only knocking once. She was walking around normally and jumped into the wheelchair as soon as she saw me. I believe it was for money, since in Canada/Quebec, you get money when your child has a genetic disability. If it was legal, I would have slapped some sense into that bitch. A resident's face fell quite dramatically when I informed them the attention in ADHD doesn't mean you like attention. As someone with that, always fun when people think that. I was diagnosed with that in 1993 or so, and I have never heard this. I need to get out more. You are probably just not paying attention. Back in Korea, there was a guy in my MASH unit who was always trying to get sent home with a Section 8. He was a draftee, but most of us were and no one went to the lengths he did. Mostly he would just cross-dress as a woman, but he would try other things too, like pretending to be a Cleopatra, or a traveling salesman, or just a normal civilian. Arco never bought it. I guess he kept him around for company morale or something. Eventually he kind of gave up after he got promoted to company clerk, but he still had all those dresses up until the end of the war. My friend who worked in the psychiatric ward at a hospital, one day he was called in to deal with someone who was mentally unfit to be with others. He comes in, finds a 50-year-old woman running naked through the hallways with security guards chasing her. He tried calming her down. She started yelling at him saying, "I wanted my meds, but they wouldn't give them. Now I'm gonna give them some titty." She then starts shaking her chest at him. She was quite endowed. I mean some serious honkers. A real set of badumkers. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. She gets taken into a special padded room. She was then given her meds and promptly let go. Her mental file said she was mentally competent. Turns out her meds, the ones she had been raving about, she hadn't been taking but was selling. $25 per pill I believe. And this act was her way to get more. Running through the hallways at a hospital with no clothes on, swinging her massive Dobbin honkers, and not harming a single person in the process of being manhandled by security. Just your average day, I guess. I had a lady who loved attention. She thought she was crazy and had dissociative identity disorder. Think the movie Split. Actually, now that I think about it, I saw her around the time that movie came out. She claimed to have many different personalities, one of them where she regresses into a 10-year-old boy named Billy. Anyways, this lady started screaming, tantruming, throwing herself on the floor. Nurses were trying to control her without giving too much attention and feeding into it. She then saw the medical student and the patient told him, "Tell Dr. Macaroni and Sneeze that Billy is out now." She said this incredibly clear and concise, not in a whining 10-year-old tone she was switching in and out of. Psychologist, not psychiatrist, but I used to work at the VA as a trauma psychologist. My job had nothing to do with whether people got service connected. That was an entirely different process. That said, a small minority of people thought if they could trick me into doxing them with PTSD, they would be rolling in dough. They would not have been. The most blatant version of this was someone who had clearly found the DSM criteria online and tried to parrot it back to me without knowing at all what the symptoms meant. At one point this person told me they have hypervigilance, Hypervigilance. When I asked them to give me an example, they looked like a deer in the headlights. I want to stress how small a minority of people this was. Most people I worked with, 1, really did have PTSD, 2, were extremely distressed by it and had it affecting their lives immensely, and 3, wouldn't actually file for service connection because they didn't think they deserved it. I think veterans get a lot of flack for filing spurious claims for service connection, but on my side it was a very small minority who were trying to pull one over on people. Most of these men and women just wanted to feel better. I worked as an on-call crisis worker in a community hospital, responding mostly to work calls. A chronic patient with a borderline personality disorder diagnosis presented with behavior that did not warrant an inpatient hospitalization, despite wanting it. When I was getting his discharge instructions together, he left the exam room he was in and found a cleaning cart and sipped some cleaning solution. I walked into the room and I could smell it and asked what the smell was, and he very nonchalantly pointed to the cart and said he didn't know what it was. He drank something off the cart. I think he swished and spit it out, but he got his wish. Not a psychiatrist, but a secretary for a PICE ward at a hospital as a college student, who was also trained to be part of the takedown team. That is, when a patient gets unruly and non-compliant, we are sent in to safely get them restrained. One day I came into work expecting it to be a normal day. I immediately hear the code over the comm system for the takedown team to come to room 3. Room 3 is the intake room and where all new patients are seen. We arrive in the room to assess the situation, and there are feces spread on the walls and a man rubbing it all over his chest, completely naked. We managed to get him restrained without too much hassle, and we are all covered in feces at this point due to him fighting us at first. We get done and him restrained, and the doctor on the team asks him, "Why did you feel the need to rub feces all over?" His response, "I'm homeless, the US Gov won't take care of me, and I want food and a place to stay. The shelters are full, and I knew that I could get at least 72 hours of warmth and food by acting crazy." We gave the man a full 2-week treatment stay instead, and had the VAW and AV come in to get him housing. Literally one of the best patients I've dealt with while working there from that point forward, even helping to calm other vets down on the floor before we had to do a takedown. It's absolutely atrocious that these veterans feel the only way they can get the help they need is to do something this extreme. Last I heard, the guy was doing much better. Dav helped him get a job doing cleanup at construction sites and an apartment of his own. Edit. Forgot to add, the doctor could tell this man wasn't likely to be insane. All of his answers to questions and tests came back normal. That's when he went to rubbing feces all over because he knew without something extreme we'd have to release him. Did a psych placement as a student and was in a discharge meeting with this homeless guy. He was brought into the hospital because police had been called as he was threatening to jump off a bridge. He claimed depression and suicidal thoughts, which it was found out not to be. So he said he was hearing voices, which was also not true. Dude was just desperate to have shelter and food. Sad case. I'm not a psychiatrist, but I'm not sure if this Karen was real insane or fake insane. So I was going with GK to get some food and other essentials before COVID when I saw this old hack going full on Karen at GK. She was saying kgi your iPad. I turned around and said, "Miss, that's my iPad," as I wasn't lying about that. I gave GK my little iPad to play with. It had kids games and YouTube Kids on it, so he could be trusted with it. His parents were at work, so I had to look after GK. Now back to the story. Karen was going freaking super saiyan on my nephew. Then she had a horrible idea. She fucking spit on me and took my iPad and said, "Oh la 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 la, I'm the craziest person in the whole world, la la la. This is my iPad for my psycho iSIM, and I get to play on it." So the fucking hack pranced around with the iPad, and guess what? RP, random person, said, "Ma'am, I think you should go back to the asylum." Karen looked at the man in the classic Karen side eye and said, "Oh Jersey, back me up." At this point GK was full out bawling. So I called a staff member to come over. They ended up calling security for this lady to be removed. They ended up finally removing her and returning with my iPad. I'll make an update if I see Karen again, but I don't look forward to it. A friend was recently killed by a suicidal driver going the wrong way on I-80. She was on meth, fentanyl, and norfentanyl, high amounts. She is telling police that she wasn't driving the truck when she was clearly the only person in the vehicle. Is this woman going to plead insanity and try to get out of her incredibly narcissistic actions? It really pisses me off. Also terrible that this person was released on $50,000 bail. What judge would trust this person? A serial killer named Kenneth Bianchi tried to plead insanity during his trial until the prosecution psychiatrist did this. At his trial, Bianchi pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity, claiming that another personality, one Steve Walker, had committed the crimes. He convinced a few expert psychiatrists that he indeed suffered from multiple personality disorder, but investigators brought in their own psychiatrists, mainly Martin Orn. When Orn mentioned to Bianchi that in genuine cases of the disorder, there tends to be 3 or more personalities, Bianchi promptly created another alias, Billy. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for making it to the end. Here's a meme as a reward. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more Reddit stories.